The pledge. Start out with correspondence and communication. Mr. Brooks?
We do not have any this month.
Okay, then we'll move on to reports. Joanne?
Orange County School Boards.
Orange County School Boards? Uh-oh.
When we were there last time, we were discussing the budget and that Susan Doyle will be retiring now. Also Doris Slattery is also retiring from the Section 9 area. Will also be retiring. And our next meeting is June 7th.
Okay. And Mr. Milazzo?
We haven't had a meeting since the last report. Next Thursday is the Ulster School Board's awards dinner. But other than that, there's nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brooks?
Yes, we have actually quite a presentation for the Board of Education tonight. I'm actually quite proud of what went into putting this together. As you know, we spent some time on data last year and talked to the board about our report card results and really started to focus in on those results and aiming our system at a data-driven approach, but really an outcomes approach. Taking a look at our program, pulling each piece apart and making sure fundamentally, are we teaching the right things, but primarily at its core, are we teaching the right things very well? And that really is a major focus. So you'll hear those themes through this presentation. This new version really is data 2.0 for our management team. I'm certainly indebted to Ms. Hecht for taking on the project lead here, but our three principals also spent a substantial amount of time with their department chairs, with grade level people, with teachers in classrooms, really digging into what does this data truly say. And as a former science teacher, and I like to pretend I dabble in science still, the interesting part about data is it rarely answers questions. Usually it asks new sets of questions once you dig through it. So if you would, as a Board of Education, keep your eye open on the concept of what questions does this force us to ask ourselves. Towards the end of the presentation, after the principals dig through the data and share the information with you, they also will begin a retrospective portion of this where they truly look into where have we been, but more importantly, where are we going from an improvement mindset. So I'm pretty excited about the process. Certainly tonight's presentation is an important element of it, but quite honestly, what led to tonight's presentation was substantially more valuable than what you're going to see for the next 20 or 30 minutes. Although it's really important because it's the performance side of it, but leading up to the performance was really truly a worthwhile experience. So thank you ahead of time, and I pass it off to, actually, wait a minute, before I let you loose, I just want to make a couple of quick announcements. First of all, yes, we are very excited about the possibilities that exist with a relationship with SUNY Ulster. We are certainly at the very early stages of making a program like that work and are very encouraged and fortunate to have the support of the county executive. So that was a pretty exciting day the other day when the county executive came down to talk about the possibilities there. And Dr. Roberts, the SUNY Ulster president, and I are in continuous communication, and there will be more to come as that potential develops. I want to thank the community for tremendous support with our budget. It was quite a process to get to a budget that we produced for the public to vote on, and they passed it with an overwhelming majority. So we certainly are very appreciative of the support from the public. The policy committee is nearing the end of review of the two largest sections, 7,000 and 8,000. I would anticipate unless there's any major bumps between now and then, that the policy committee will give the thumbs up over the next week or so to put a first read for 7,000 and 8,000 on the June 1st agenda. That potential exists, and that's wonderful. And we also have added a recognition to Students of the Month for next meeting. We've also invited our Special Olympians to come and receive a certificate from us that night. And we also actually have a special recognition for 2 students that took on a leadership role, which is not typical for these 2 students. I'm going to leave it at that and allow the surprise to open itself up from 2 elementary students at the next meeting. So, and with that, I will pass it off to Ms. Heck and the principal. So thank you.
Okay, I'll take my time. I don't care. Somewhere where you can see that, right, I think? Okay. So, good evening, and as Mr. Brooks said, it was more about the process than about what you'll see here. So we are going to present a quick review of the data that the principals did share in the fall in detail, and then we're going to really spend a little bit more time with the initiatives that we actually partook in from this past year and where we're going to go in the next year, okay? I don't know if you can see this, but also you do have it in front of you at your slide. The state report card gives us data that includes student enrollment, student-teacher performance, graduation rate, and this is just some of the data that they have given over the course of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. We use this data to actually develop programming and services for the students. Although the report card is about state results, we want you to understand that that's not the only results we use when we're developing program or services. And what we've done is listed several of the data points that we use. You will see SLOs at the top because this is last year's data, and that's what we used last year as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Walsh and Ms. Clinton to talk about and review quickly the testing results. Sure.
I'm going to start, obviously, because of just the grade levels. I wanted to speak about the number of people who took the test, the number of students who took it last year. Out of 154 possible students taking the test, 128 students took the test. So these results are based on that. In 3rd grade, you can see New York State proficient in levels 3 and 4 was 42%. We came in at 38%. At levels 2 and 4, state proficiency 73. We came in a little under at 70. Test refusal is 19%. 4th grade test refusal is 28%, and 5th grade is 32%. I think it's significant to note that we worked hard to try and bring those numbers down this year, and we're hoping to see improvement going forward because we did so. So we made a concerted effort to call parents to try and encourage the test taking, and our numbers were better. So hopefully we're looking for a great improvement there. Do you want to jump in?
So similarly, a lot of this information was presented back in the fall by Alicia Hudak, if you remember when we reflected on ELA. And in 6th grade, we, in 3s and 4s, we had 37% compared to 34%. So we did well in that area, a little bit above the state, but then when you add in the 2s through 4s, we went a little bit below. I think the grade to point out is the recognition of the 8th grade and why it was so much different, and that is an area that we put a lot of focus on and did more digging into the data, and also a recognition of the refusal rate at 37%. So one of our areas of concern is that although this does give us a snapshot and provide us information that we need to definitely examine, and we did examine, one of the reasons on the first slide we talked about the other areas of data is because we really need to understand where all of our students are and where they would have been had they all actually taken the test. We continue this year for our 8th grade to have a large number of refusals, but we're hopeful that it'll be more reflective as we continue to move forward, because there was a decrease at the elementary school, and our 6th grade actually had the largest number of students taking the exam again. So we're kind of hoping that some of that trend where we're at the 37%, that we're going to be moving away from so many people refusing the test and more students taking the test, so we can have a better snapshot of what's going on with the programs.
This is just a visual representation of the data that you just saw on the page before. And Ms. Clinton addressed 8th grade ELA.
Sure, yeah, chime in anytime you want. So, just on the refusal rate, do we track, or does the state ask us to track? Because obviously we know how those students do in general testing. Do we actually quantify that and say of our 37%, you know,
Projections of what they would have.
50% of those people are A students, 10% are C students? Do we look at that of the refusals, what kind of grades they get normally?
I can tell you that when you see the science slide jumping ahead for 8th grade, the day of the test, all of the top students in the class turned in notes and refused. And I can say that 100% because I personally wanted to cry, because I was like, why are you doing this at the last minute? Because it really had, you're going to see it in the 8th grade data for science. It is even a greater percentage. Many of those students refuse all 3 tests. So I do track the data each year. And I actually have shared my 8th grade data already up to Mr. Lawler, so he can start to review that now as he's looking at programming and such. But we also, that's why I said we want to know where they stand. So you could talk to someone like Kim, who's going to tell you that she could tell you exactly where they would be. I can't give you numbers, but we definitely look at that. And I know that the math department in particular loves their data more than anybody in the building, and probably could give you more specifics. But yes, so the short answer is yes. I can't give you concrete numbers, but I can tell you you're going to see it in science.
I mean, when we talk about people saying the numbers are low, that would be a statistic that obviously we know who opts out because they turn in a note.
Right.
We know what their grade winds up being in English,
Right.
or in math, or in science, whatever, whichever area it is. We know what their grades wind up being. I just think it combats some of these low score things when you're trying to answer why.
So it isn't our only measure.
Right, no, it's
Right.
just an added factor in the whole.
And when you're talking about 37% of the children in 8th grade, that's a lot of kids.
Yeah.
So, as Ms. Clinton had mentioned, it looks like there might be a tide change on its way, because the opt-outs in 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade, and 3rd grade are down substantially from what we just did in April and May, year to year. So perhaps there's a different thought as far as people's acceptance and buy-in to state testing. But quite honestly, the state has to help us more, because we can't overcome the tide of sentiment from some people. And it's a state versus local element that no matter what we do, as far as building a level of credibility, some people won't get over that hurdle. And that's a problem.
That was going to be,
Put a number on it for you. We did get 3rd grade opt-outs down to about 9% this year. So if we can hold strong for you, Mrs. Clinton, in 5 years, I mean, it should be hopefully a help. And we're breaking the trend as we go each time, hopefully. And we made it very purposeful for the children who didn't take the test. They did work related to the content area that was being tested, so that they were having an instructional block of time, weren't going back and saying, that was so much fun, we did nothing and played, and
think one of the things we're also going to start to track is that, I had students who refused as a 6th grader, then as a 7th grader, then as an 8th grader, who are going to be going to the high school, who have never sat for some of these assessments. So I think the concern going forward is to monitor that data to see if that's going to have an impact on how they perform when they can't refuse or they don't graduate. So it becomes a different world when they get there. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any correlation.
So one of the concerns that I have regarding the opt-out movement is that it doesn't provide children, first of all, it doesn't provide us with a data set that's very valuable because you have so many kids that are not participating. But it also doesn't give children a real experience over multiple years to high-stakes testing. And there is a real purpose to that, because then when they get to 9th grade, when, quote, it counts, it's too early of an experience for some because they haven't sat through this experience, and that's worrisome too.
My daughter asks out every year, and every year I tell her, you're going to have to take tests when you get to middle school and high school, and if you really want to do well, now's the time to practice. These are practice tests for your 9th grade.
And quite honestly, I do understand the sentiment, especially the early sentiment of the opt-out movement, because I guess unvarnished, the state really did mess this up. The way they rolled out the curriculum, the way they rolled out the tests, and the way they re-skewed the tests to be so difficult, not just in design, but in the way they put the cut scores together and the curving. It was a monumental task to get kids to do well on it, and it was inappropriate. We're still reeling from those decisions that were made by the state. So I understand the sentiment on all sides, stuck in the middle.
I just want to share a moment. The state does set out a performance criterion for us to meet, and they use an effective AMO, they use state standards, a safe harbor. We just recently calculated after all of this, and I have to share with you that we met that performance criteria for 3 through 8 in ELA and math. So even though this is telling us one story, this other set of data is showing us something else. So it's very encouraging.
So in math, I'm speaking to the refusal part and letting you know that in 3rd grade, 130 out of 154 students took the test, 110 out of 145 in 4th grade, and 97 out of 156. So putting a number on it helps to clarify the percentage of refusals a little bit. Obviously, we are looking to just always improve our scores no matter who's taking the test or how many, and we're working hard to close gaps. This is a great starting point for us to see where we are and where we need to go. So we've done a lot to move from here.
I think you also probably realize over the last couple of years, we put a lot of effort into teaching our teachers how to teach math at the elementary school, and I think you're starting to see that show off here.
And I'm just going to, again, draw your attention to that 8th grade 54%. I mean, you can tell we're within range of what the state had and above it when we look at the 2 to 4, but that's not a good indicator. And also remember that your algebra students are not taking the assessment, but that they wouldn't be taking it anywhere, but they are not taking the assessment in 8th grade. So it's just important to recognize that. So, 7th grade, we did above average compared to New York State, and that's because there's a lot of work done and a lot of communication between the grade levels and identifying gaps and areas that they need to focus on. So we're also pretty excited, as we're going to talk a little bit later, about the changes in 4th and 5th grade and the way the teaching models are set up down there, and hopeful that that'll continue to influence our 6th graders as they come to us, hopefully a little bit more ready at grade level than they had in this particular year.
And just so everybody knows what I was whispering to Mike about were the opt-out rates for this year, which appear to be continuing that trend of less people opting out for the most part, except 7 and 8 ELA.
Yeah, and the second test, obviously, the refusal rates tend to increase because, either they don't like math, there's that math phobia concept, or it's just, well, I don't really want to take a test, and all my friends said it was better not. And it's silent in the building. We don't encourage it at all. In fact, I had sixth grade parents upset with me this year that I was expecting students to do quiet work if they were refusing to take the test and not letting them play games. So, but I was okay with being the meanie with that, because the goal is to have them take the test so we have the data and we can use that data to inform instruction.
I have a question in regards to the students that take it because their parents say that's what you're doing, but yet still have that phobia of test taking, have that feeling of, well, this doesn't matter, and then you have that skewing your data. So, I mean, is there a way to teach to that? So our
That
data,
mindset-
because I feel like our data is skewed just from that alone.
And I'll tell you that the mindset is a difficult thing to change at the middle level, although I know that many of our students, in particular in English, really use extended time in 7th grade, because I think there was a big push, and I know Mr. Bell knows what I'm speaking of right now. But I can also tell you that I had other students who literally took it in 15 minutes, and when I said, why are you taking such a short amount of time? Well, it doesn't really matter. I said, but it does matter. It's your name. Those are your results. And they're like, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter until I get to high school. So there is that adolescent brain that you try to convince them that it matters, but a lot of it's much more an intrinsic value for them. So yes, I think some teachers are able to capture and motivate that, but it's not for all of them. I think I'm still going to have a certain percentage of students who are like, this doesn't matter. So again, until I think the state finds a balance of making this matter in some capacity, it's going to be a hard mindset compared to having been a former high school teacher. My regents mattered. It mattered whether you graduated high school or not, and I know that that will also help in many cases for high school. So I don't know what that balance is, because you don't want to necessarily make them have to pass the test, so to speak, in order to move to the next grade level if they're ready. But there is a big disconnect with 3-8. So
Yeah, it just almost seems like there's this culture amongst the kids that somehow or another that, no matter, what your parents' philosophy is, no matter what the school is, no matter how it benefits you for the future, there is this culture that exists within that it seems like we need to somehow address and try to get to that. And I know, adolescence,
And
it's
again,
difficult,
I'm
but-
hopeful with this. Our 6th grade refusal rate was the lowest. We actually, you would see when we gave our tests out on that day, 6th grade had far more tests going into the rooms because more students seemed engaged and involved, and I think they took it seriously. So I'm hoping, again, that trend will continue, because I know Patty said that, her refusal rates were lower. So I don't know if this is that group that, my 8th graders, like I said, opted out in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. So to get some of those kids to change over from not taking it in 6th and 7th grade and all of a sudden changing that mindset in 8th grade, I think that ship had kind of sailed for many of them. So again, let's hope that the trend is moving in a different direction.
Well, that was my other question too. When we say, if the ship has sailed and we're looking at perhaps in the future less refusals, is it because just of that changing tide, or do we actually have another strategy in place? You know what I'm saying?
Because there are surveys that will tell you that the majority of people don't trust the federal government with driving education. That there are a decent number of people that will say, I don't necessarily trust the state with education. Substantially less people will say they have faith that a local board of education will do the right thing. Those same surveys have show tremendous support that parents have of their children's teachers. And Patty and Deb both work very hard with as many teachers as would listen to communicate with their parents to say this is a valuable experience. Because at night, when you're sitting around the dinner table, not too many people start the conversation with, so what do you think about the United States Department of Education? The first question they say is, how was school today? How was math? How was science? How was social studies? And those relationships matter. So certainly in 2013, when this all happened, change in standards, change in testing approach. Oh, and by the way, let's connect it to teacher evaluation at the same time. It became a political quagmire. So as this moves farther and farther away from 2013 and the test becomes more valid, teachers will have more connection with it because of course we need testing in schools. We need to know what the benchmarking is for children. And then that dialogue will help reinforce that kids should be taking these tests. That I think is something that is a little more nebulous. But I know that these two made a big effort with teachers, and teachers sent letters home in many instances to encourage test taking. So,
Well, what about maybe even you have to have the right kid, I know, kids, like a peer mentor type thing. Find somebody that's at the high school that either has seen the benefit of those tests or maybe opted out and is realizing how difficult it is to take tests. It's not going to
Great
help the
idea.
elementary school,
That's a
but
great
maybe
idea.
at the middle school to try and, hey, not us, not their parents, not other teachers, some kid that's in the high school that's either struggling or has got a benefit from taking those tests to say, hey, these have helped me.
we have children that travel down to the elementary school from the high school. I am certain that Mr. Lawler would love to support that endeavor and work, so that's fantastic.
That's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
I will tell you that since Lily Collins took over as science department chair, she had an idea because she was very concerned about the percentage of refusals, and she decided to do a review trip to New York City to the Museum of Natural History for students who were taking the 8th grade assessment. So it was kind of a motivation that if you're going to take the assessment, then I'll take you on this review trip. So something, again, to say, we're going to get you ready, but we're also going to do something a little bit different for you, hoping that we'd get some buy-in. And I only know of one specific person, but I did get one letter removed from the refusal pile as a result of that. And I don't know, maybe it's just something going forward as we build, again, that culture. So we are trying to think very much outside the box, but I like that idea, too. So.
I also wanted to point out, I don't know if it has to do with our elementary mindset. I don't hear the piece about it not mattering or not counting for anything. So
think that's a
maybe
middle
as the
school.
adolescents become more finding their own way and finding that autonomy that they're trying to struggle to develop, it might come then. But my guys are, for the most part, very compliant and want to please the teachers, and the teachers are trying to make it that it is something, you've got this, you know it, we've been working on it, and you're just showing what you know. So we present it in a positive way and try to obviously de-escalate the stress, and there's always going to be some.
And I have
There's
good
treats,
yeah.
too. We give treats.
And I have good success with my kids by explaining to them it doesn't affect your report card yet, but it's good practice, and it gives Mr. Beck or Mr. McInerney, whoever their math teacher was for that year, a good understanding of how well he's teaching so that he can do better next year.
Absolutely. It gives us so much information.
I know we have a lot more that you want to talk to us about, so maybe we can move through those slides with some
to talk till the last slide,
level of expertise.
We're doing good with that, right? We'll jump right to science.
You're talking to the wrong crowd if you didn't
It
want to
really
talk
does.
until
I
the
mean,
last
it
slide.
really does, yeah.
These are conversations we don't mind having.
Yep, so we did go through science just then.
So people take the science test.
They do like taking the science test because it's hands-on.
Right, that performance piece does make it something more, I don't know, encouraging.
And Deb already spoke to the Science 8 drop because of the students that pulled out at the last minute. Kind of crazy.
So the opt-out piece is over when we look at the high school. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. Just in looking at the Regents results, this is going to be district results. So in November, we had talked about school results. So it's mostly the same. There's a slight difference, though. We have some out-of-district place students who may be involved in these test results. What I'm going to call attention to in particular would be the Common Core Algebra. There was a 20 0.9% increase from 2015 to 2016. There was a massive amount of effort when I arrived last November underway in improving those results. There had been a problem with the 2015 results in algebra, and the teachers really tore apart the test and their results and dove into how we could get an improvement. And it was really amazing to see a 20.9% increase in a passing rate. It's even higher when you take out the out-of-district place students. I believe it was around 22% we had presented in November. So that's the one that I call attention to. On this slide, it's mostly consistency. You're going to see slight ups and downs from year to year with Regents, but it's a very consistent picture for us over the years. Yep. So mastery rate is 85% or better on Regents exams. And the one I'm going to call your attention to here, Mr. Brooks talked before about data sometimes is not that accurate. I'm going to tell you I'll point physics down there on the bottom. The mastery percentage is down 19.2%. That's a victory for us in the sense that we nearly doubled the number of students taking the physics Regents. So prior to that, in 2015 and before, it was really a very small group of kids, somewhere around 35, that took the Regents. So it was students who were, incredibly successful in school that challenged it. We've really invigorated our physics program in the last few years and doubled that number of students taking the test. So you'll see on a slide later that the passing rate maintains where it is. We had a little difficulty with the mastery rate, which I have to say our teacher, Mr. Heisel, I'll use his name, is absolutely going after that in terms of mastery results and raising that number. But to me, this an incredible thing that we doubled the number of students in our physics program in our building.
Yeah, and this is a mindset piece too, and actually this ties in, and I'm going to put her on the spot, to a conversation that Ms. Houghton and I had probably about a month and a half or maybe 2 months ago. I know time flies. But really trying to figure out a way to aspirationally encourage children to take the highest level courses that they can possibly take and be successful at. That conversation between student, teacher, parent, and guidance counselor is a key piece. Because if we can get kids with transcripts that have high-level courses on it, taking difficult, challenging courses in their junior and senior year, more colleges that are highly competitive will look at our children. And the more they have in that transcript, and it's a balance between that transcript and the grade, so you have to carefully balance that. You want to have a high GPA, but you want to have challenging courses. That means more kids taking chemistry, more kids taking physics, more kids taking Algebra 2 Trig, more kids taking pre-calc, calculus. It puts them in a different pool when colleges look at them. That is a piece that is a marathon for us. It's a long-term look at it. And this wonderful teacher right here sitting in our audience looks at it from a 7th and 8th grade perspective and saying, what can we do as a feeder program so that we affect, and we looked at calculus numbers, right? Or I texted Mr. Lawler, I think, as we were talking to get what were the calculus numbers to see how can we get more kids on that track to be participants in a calculus program. So we are looking at this from a team aspect. And that is one of the biggest takeaways from this.
So when we look at this slide on graduation rate, this is a 4-year graduation rate. There are a number of different graduation rates on the state website. The 4-year rate is the measure that we're using. And just if you can see the second and third bullet, the district 4-year graduation rate, 92%. That's in comparison to below that, the Marlboro High School 4-year graduation rate. Those are students who remained in our building throughout the 4 years that they were there. That's a 94% rate, the same as it was in November. Looking over to the right at the graph, basically we want that black line to get to 100%. That's the goal, Regents diploma or higher. We actually want to see that orange line on the bottom. That's the percentage of students who get a local diploma. A local diploma would be if you take advantage of the safety net that New York State has put in place, that if a student struggles on a Regents, they may use a score between 55 and 64 to be able to graduate. So we obviously, we're pleased with our 94% graduation rate. We would like to, over time, lower our local diploma rate as we have students get through the Regents exams. That line in the middle, the silver line, is the advanced Regents diploma rate, and so we definitely would like to see that number go up as well. That anybody with an advanced diploma is included in the black line on top. Sure. So that, yes, actually if you look at the so anybody with an IEP certificate would be in that range.
Right, the state changed the name of it. It's really not an IEP diploma, they call it a commencement credential now, and that would be 1% of our students.
Right, and that number does not count in our graduation percentage. That doesn't count as part of the 94%. That would not count as a four-year graduate, even if you get a credential of a GED.
Right, it's important to note that right now, under federal guidelines, states must comply with the No Child Left Behind Act, which is becoming the ESSA, and that only allows, a graduate is only a graduate if they graduate in the four-year cohort. So from the day they start ninth grade, 4 years later, if they graduate, they're a graduate. If they need to go an extra semester or a year, they become a 5-year graduate, but they don't count on our accountability as being a graduate.
Are they a non-graduate?
No, they graduate, but for accountability purposes, we're measured by how many kids we graduate in a 4-year period.
So that 94 doesn't include people that had to go 5 or who dropped out or
That
who
is
may have
correct.
left to go for a GED.
That is correct. That's correct.
There
For
is no
accountability
graduation
purposes,
rate that's actually a true number when you
we
look at
could
the
probably
definitions.
we could probably put 15 different graduation rates. The number of kids that walked across the stage last June, and you know, this is the accountability
Right.
number.
So how many people leave the school district with nothing?
So
Right?
I believe that the number last year was 9 students that did not complete, and one of the things I presented in
Right.
November was actually, I didn't meet most of those kids. So you think about the irony of that, like I come in during their senior year, and for one reason or another, they had moved, they had, you know, not participated in school anymore. I think, like, for me, sometimes we get lost in the data and the numbers. What I've said from the very beginning, this is going to vary from year to year. You're going to see this go up and down a little bit here and there. It's an extraordinarily high number for us. We're going to do our best to keep it there. My test is, at the end of the year, have we done absolutely everything possible to assist every student to be able to, you know, find their way through the high school to success, which for some students is a commencement credential. For others, it's GED. For others, it's a Regents diploma or a local diploma, and for others, it's an advanced diploma. So I can tell you for sure, last year, we did everything possible. We are in that process right now for this year's group of seniors. So I'm actually very proud of the work that we do. All the different numbers, it gets complicated. You had a question?
Yeah, it says 183, what's the total actual number? Is it 9 more than that?
Yes, it was, for the district, it was 192, but if we look at the high school, it was 180 out of 189 that graduated. 4-year graduation. There was actually more than that at the commencement itself. 185 students walked across the stage, so.
In regards,
No, but we have a smaller class size. It's about 146 right now. We have 146 students in the 12th grade class. Yeah, but again, the percentage, that shouldn't impact the percentage. Last year we had a huge class. They were, yeah. Right.
Can you go back a couple slides? Right there. That shows the percentage right there. So the 3-year trend goes from, I think it's 88 to 90 to 92.
Right, and again, that's district data. Our right.
in,
So Mr. Brooks spoke before about the process. So the first slide.
sorry, that's okay. I just wanted to ask Mr. Lawler, in regards to those students that are at risk for not graduating or a local diploma, or how early on are they identified, and what type of intervention, or not necessarily what type as far as the details, but how quickly is that identified, and then how quickly is an intervention put in place to try to reach that goal of graduation?
So you've really got two subpopulations in the, what I'm going to call the At Jeopardy group. One of them is a group of students who may have struggled along the, throughout the years with their education. So there's ongoing interventions for those students between their teachers, working with parents, working with, certainly in our level in the middle school, school counselors working with parents, setting up meetings, doing everything we can, offering review sessions, encouraging students to stay after school. All those things are done throughout the years. The second subpopulation of Jeopardy is the seniors who, during senior year, they've gotten through all, and their benchmarks and measurements, and then they start to have difficulty with following through and getting through that process. The moment that happens, that's one of the things I said to counselors walking into the teachers. I'm not okay with anything other than me meeting with the student, talking to them, encouraging them, working with parents. Sometimes we get a lot of support in those things. Sometimes it's us working through things. That's a skill set Mr. Cordolano is on top of, so we want to continue to work with them, offer them extra help, set up meetings. If there's a problem with students and we start to see an attendance issue because they're not doing well, we try to get them with the teacher, myself, or one of the counselors immediately to step in and intervene. Because that population, it's really about them engaging in class, because they've already shown us over the years they're going to be successful if they come to school, engage in class, and do the assignments they need to. So for them, it's really about us telling them we care about you, it's important, and we're going to keep doing that right through the end. If you've never been part of shepherding that process, whether it's a teacher working with seniors or a guidance counselor or administrator, you really don't understand how much goes into getting to that number. Again, that's the everything possible to help students be successful.
Ryan, did the counselors and even teacher leaders, maybe the department chairs, have a review process during the 3 or 4 years, the 3 years leading up to the senior year, to look at students at risk and make sure that they're not, let's say, falling through the cracks? Is there some kind of a process built in for that?
Well, we do have the RTI committee where students are referred for service and help and discussion, and we actually meet with the counselors once every 2 to 3 weeks, Mr. Cordolano, myself, and the entire intervention staff, to talk about students who are struggling. We take referrals from teachers and from department chairs when they're concerned about students. So there's just ongoing referral. It's the best way to put it, is that we're concerned, we want to get involved immediately and try to help students improve. I believe the RTI meets once every 3 weeks. It varies depending on the calendar. Right. Well, again, I'm going to go back to the two groups. The group of students who've struggled and needed help along the way, they've been getting services and help and direct supports. For the other students, it's much less a formal intervention as it is, we're going to the lab right now, we're going to sit down in the library, and we're going to work on this project together. That's really what tends to start to happen for those students. So there really is, like, those students they need the support of, we love you, we care about you, and we're going to make sure you get through. They don't need help in knowing how to do the math problems, they just need to know it's important, and we're telling you right now you got to do it. Right.
Well, the fact that you're an administrator that just said, I love you and we care about you, that means a lot, so.
We don't always start with the I love you, but we get there. But thank you.
I'm not saying to them, I'm saying to us.
We tell them, I tell them they're important, and they're extremely important to us, they're important to their families, it's important to their lives. They may not see the value now, but this is why you matter, and we care, and we're going to help you through this. And if there's anything you need from us, let us know.
So you
And they
don't
do.
love us?
I love everybody, I'm sorry. I think it's time for me to move on.
Kumbaya.
So I won't read through all of these bullets for you, but these are some of the initiatives that have already been in place and some things that we're doing going forward. A lot of them are ongoing. But I think that I'm going to point out a couple of things that are key to what's taking place in the elementary school. And one of the big things that I see as making a difference is 4th and 5th grade teaming and departmentalization. It has given the teachers the opportunity to become experts in their field. Obviously, we have good teachers and strong teachers, but the targeted instruction and the collaboration that they have with their peers on one content area, teaching that subject to 3 different groups of children, so they have a population of about 90 students on their caseload now, has enabled them to strengthen their instructional practice in many ways. And tying in with that, I think also is the in-district scoring of the assessments. So having the opportunity to actually look at what the tests are, how the children are answering, and to have that discourse with their colleagues, K-5, the kindergarten teachers, seeing the assessments is quite an eye-opener. So I think that that has been a wonderful practice as well. And there was one other thing that I wanted to speak about, just the ongoing revisions to the curriculum maps and lesson planning go back to the theme of, are we teaching the right things and are we teaching them well? They are living, breathing documents. They're going to change. It's not going to be the same thing as last year, or even what a teacher can pull out of a hat and say, I did this last year, let me open the plan book to page 6 again. It just changes. The dynamics are all moving. I know I said that was all I was saying, but I want to talk about science. Not only are we participating in learning about the next generation science standards, I had teachers that were working on it last summer in advance of when the requirements are coming out, but our teachers have participated in BOCES in developing the new curriculum for the county as well. So we hope to be leaders in that field. And when it was nice to see the teachers come back and have a sense of pride that we are ahead of this, and people were so shocked, like, oh, you're already doing it. So I think that they had a strong sense of where they are in their practice with science as well.
If I could highlight a key takeaway there, with teaming in fourth and fifth grade, and this is actually going to sound sad, but it's not, we're emphasizing science and social studies again. We're teaching science and social studies again. Because of the standards movement, slowly but surely, social studies and science curriculum got watered down in the elementary school because there was such an overemphasis, important emphasis, but such an overemphasis on math and English language arts. That
Absolutely.
literally, science and social studies became an every other week subject.
Or at the tail end of the
This week we're going to work
day,
on
yep.
social studies, and next week we're going to work on science, and so on. And that's not unique to Marlborough. That is across the state. So it's very nice to hear that we have a set period for social studies and a set period for science, and I'm loved going into fourth and fifth grade classes with little scientists with goggles on and gloves on and doing hands-on work, hands-on labs. It's been fantastic. But if you're not going to do it later, could you just highlight a little bit about the work with Dr. Riley, too, unless you're going to touch it later?
Sure. Dr. Riley is a literacy consultant that was coordinated with BOCES, and she has come in and done targeted instruction in reading with each grade level individually. So we would have the kindergarten team freed up for the day, and it was multiple days that she was in. We spread it out, so she gave her overview. The teachers participated in teacher-directed instruction, and then the second time she came back, we had children come in and participate. So the teachers would do a guided reading lesson with her. They would debrief afterwards. They would bring in a student from a different level, and they would cover a multitude of levels in that session. So say maybe a high, a medium, and a low reader for the second grade level. And different teachers had the opportunity to do their lesson, and everyone debriefed, and it was a very worthwhile learning experience. They are clamoring to have her back, and she's excited to come back to start the new year because they don't want it to go by the wayside. And they, as I said, are good teachers, and they want to be great teachers, and we want them to be great teachers. So we're getting there and giving the supports, and it's building a lot of dialogue, not only across the grade level, but now vertically as well as horizontally, so that's going to be key in instruction as well.
She's also, I think, inspired the teachers to talk about reading, how I'm teaching reading, and the resources for reading. So they're now going through all the materials in their, not only their classrooms, but in their collaboration room, and they're designing units and putting together sets of books that are targeted towards skills. So it's really exciting.
It is. It's nice to talk about reading at elementary school.
Our intention is to continue that relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks.
We actually were disappointed this month. We had her scheduled for the special education teachers. So we were covering AIS, K through 5, and then special ed, but she was unable to. She had a family emergency and had to cancel. So she won't make it up. Any questions on this? That's a lot to take in. You've been busy. Our technology initiative
I found it very fascinating, the way they were teaching how you can translate letters into all these different languages, so there's no language barrier anymore for our parents. If a letter goes home, it's actually translated into their language, and I thought that was very good, especially with like things like this with report cards. It's a nice way to communicate for our students and the parents now.
Thank you.
I actually found that really fascinating, the way they did that. It's like,
It's also wonderful because it's helped with teaming and collaboration with teachers. It's helped with our meetings. We put out agendas. People are adding to the agendas. I mean, we've turned a lot of things around just in that aspect. We didn't even put that up there, right? All that work. Vocabulary. I think it's important that you understand that we survey the use of the sites. So if they're not being used, they're no longer, purchased. And we're only using what the teachers are telling us work and that they use. We have a lot of pilots going on as well, like Splash Math is a pilot, and I have to tell you, it's wonderful. They're doing a lot of work with fluency with these programs, because that's what we're finding going through the data, that students need to be very quick with their facts, and if they're not, we need to help them get there. We have the eSparks program for K1. We have the iPads for K1, and we're doing a lot of assessment online as well. So we're practicing in the classroom at the elementary level with Recap and Kahoot, STAR, and soon the CBT testing of the ELA. Am I good to go? I just want to mention before, these slides were done by our department chairs and our team leaders. We met with them as a collective group and asked for their input as to what they had been working on and what we've helped them support to address those areas that the principals talked about in the fall.
So the first one is very important to us, and that was the addition of bringing back finally AIS to 6th grade. So that was one of our new hires, and a return to a program that we recognize as a major area of deficiency. So I think we've gotten a tremendous amount of impact already from that work with that 6th grade teacher working with the students and preparing them for next year for 7th grade. Also just highlighting a few things. I don't want it to appear like there's a lot of different initiatives up here, but they really all work in coordination. I don't think our teachers feel like we're in initiative overload. In some years, there feels like there's all these initiatives going on, but these are really things that are just all fit together, and we kind of broke them out so you can see how they impact different areas as all the team members talked about, all the departments talked about things that were specific to them. We've revisited our RTI process, and we had a consultant come in and work with us, and we have all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teachers trained and inputting the data there for AIS, and also kind of streamline the RTI process this year. We too have continued to score the tests in-house our second year, and I think that does provide a lot of articulation between the teachers for middle school. It's grades 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12th grade teachers coming down and actually looking at the student work. So our departments have worked in collaboration with one another. We've been able to...
Let's not brush past that one so quick. What Ryan and Deb have been able to do is bring two buildings together to collaboratively work on scoring, but also curriculum writing. And that's a key piece. Bring English teachers, bring math teachers from the two different buildings together in these organized efforts. And that is really a spectacular learning element, too. It's not easy work, but it's very powerful and very, very valuable. So I appreciate the two of you continuing to support that.
So, and we've also worked on our articulation again further with the elementary school. I would say that on the whole, we've had a little bit more focus on the 8th to 9th grade this year, but that collaboration definitely does happen 5th to 6th as well. Let's see, highlights. And then I just also want to recognize, we also restored the seventh grade foreign language program, which does help overall the students' ability to understand language in general. So not only are they learning a foreign language, but you also need to become more proficient in your own language so you can understand the differences. So for us, one of the things that isn't up there, but it was a major change, and I just wanted to draw attention to, is, we did hire 8 new teachers last year. So there is a culture shift that's also occurred in the building with, staff members, faculty members who have been there for a while, really mentoring and bringing these new teachers on board to be excited to do a great job. So it's been a really nice blend in the building this year.
I'll speak to that collaboration piece for a moment. And really that started for us certainly at the high school level with looking at our Regents results. What you don't see on all the slides was really an analysis after the tests were given, which then leads to where did our students do well, where did they struggle, which leads to the conversations that go vertically down, certainly for us through 6th grade, because we need to be talking the same language, we need to be using the same materials and kind of the same cohesive approach to teaching the subject as the students progress through the grades. So that's a huge piece, and we found themes of making sure we were following, we had vertical articulation, that we were using the same ways of instructing, the same benchmark exams that are written, and understanding of what those things are both ways. And then also for us, there was a massive focus on literacy, which we saw then turned into most of our professional development days this year were about literacy and looking specifically at what we were teaching to students. And that literacy piece was not only Mr. Van Cleve that you see there, who worked with our English teachers, but also Ms. Hecht had a number of experts and trainings for all of the subjects so that they, literacy was looked at from other perspectives.
Again, the technology at the high school, there are also, and the middle school, I'm sorry. There are some key ones there. Alex, do you want to speak to it?
Alice is a pilot that Mrs. Keene and myself started investigating last summer. We had seen it online through, I think it's McDougal, I'm not quite sure.
continued literacy focus, a continued focus on math, the increasing of the mental health support, continue to research the technology and the technology lessons. We see that growing very quickly. To design and create the science kits at the elementary building, teachers are asking if they can create their own instead of purchasing. So again, that buy-in to actually knowing the curriculum. Continuing bringing William Van Cleve down to the elementary K-5 as we're trying to do progression with the writing. You can see secondary, the fluency program, Alex. Math and I have been working very closely at the high school, so we've got problematic, we've got e-math instruction, they've got new textbooks, so there's a really strong focus with increasing the capabilities of students there. Restore the 3 full teams, reading specialists. We thank you for all of this. We talked about that.
Now that's after budget.
Increase the library media specialists. We have great dreams, as you can see from here, right? Examining the certification for science so that we can address some of those areas that you saw earlier on the slide. And again, it was teachers' input that were actually driving the focus initiatives for next year. I think we've covered this pretty well. And then you have more diagrams in your packet.
Yeah, Regents data.
So that concludes our presentation.
If I could suggest, Mr. Cantone, who will be joining us in January, had a lot of questions the other night about academic performance and how we measure it. He seems to be very interested in this kind of data, so if we could get him a copy of this so that he can review it, and he'll be at the next meeting, but reach out with questions. Might actually be worth setting up his email address and starting to copy him on some
Sure.
of his documents.
Sure. We can work on that tomorrow. All right.
Right.
Ms. Heck, could you make sure that he gets a
Remind him,
copy of
he's
that?
probably
Thank you.
got a coffee date for tomorrow night. Any questions, comments?
Excellent.
Yes, thank you. Mark, any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else from the superintendent? With that, we'll move on to item number 5, which is our public comment on this evening's agenda items. If you have any questions or comments on this evening's agenda items, please approach the podium, speak into the microphone, state your name and town, and address the Board of Education. Mark?
I just have a question on number 11.
Sure.
Property tax report card. It says, see the attached. Do you have a copy of that?
We do.
Do you have one?
Yep. Other questions, comments from the public? Anybody? Anybody? That will move on to item number 6. Resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, acknowledges the receipt of the following financial reports for April 2017 as presented. Motion for approval of this evening's consent agenda reports. Frank? Second. Jeff? Discussion? Jeffrey?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne? And myself, yes. Moving on to item number 7, personnel recommendations. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the following personnel recommendations. Is there a motion for item number 7? Frank, second. Joanne, discussion.
I have a question in regards to subs. Why is it that we start them before this is approved?
We can stop that practice, but that is something that had been in place for some time. I think we had some relative dialogue over that, that once they won't go into a classroom until they have been interviewed and vetted by Ms. Heck and also cleared fingerprints. So certainly if the board wants us to wait until we have them approved to put them into the classroom, we can do that. But we have a sub shortage, so we're trying to get them interviewed through Robin as quickly as possible and then into the classroom. There is no legal barrier to that.
Don't you have isn't there an appointment period that you can do? 30 days or something without board? I thought there was some. No, I'd have
I
to
couldn't
go back.
remember that aspect of the conversation.
I mean, policy-wise, I thought.
Right. That's primarily what drives this.
Right, okay.
And we do that for teachers as well when we have like a leave replacement. Because problem with leave replacements is sometimes it doesn't coincide with board meetings. You know, if there's an emergency action that we need to take, we need to put someone in the classroom. You know, but no one gets into a classroom until they've been interviewed. If it's a full-time position by principals and me, if it's substitute position, Ms. Heck interviews all of the substitutes that go into classrooms, and then we get fingerprints. So without fingerprint clearance, they're not in there as well, so.
But even if you do have to do that for leave replacements and it is something quick, is there a way that maybe you can email us beforehand letting us know that you've done this?
We shouldn't be doing that. We have to conduct the business publicly, so it really
Well, I
isn't.
mean, it would be on the agenda, it's just letting us know that you've done this before they even got on the agenda. Because if that's the case, then they shouldn't be here until we've approved them.
Well,
Yeah,
my
but then we
question
would
was
have to-
about the approval.
Yeah, then we would have to change the policy, because I'm almost 100% sure, I'll say I'm 99% sure, that there's a 30-day, the superintendent has the ability to hire somebody for up to 30 days without the board's approval.
There is. I'm reviewing the personnel section right now, and that will be something that will certainly be reviewed by the policy
Yeah.
committee and board, but there is something to that nature.
Because we have to be able to operate, you know, especially, you think about it in the summertime, he's got to be able to prepare and do things. We only even meet once with the new schedules.
Right.
I do have a question. Can we get a list of how many teachers you substitute again, Mike? Because every month we're approving substitutes. Are they not staying? Are they not?
We can give you numbers.
I mean,
I think we talked about that last meeting, that our numbers have increased substantially. The problem is that they're in multiple districts, but maybe you want to speak to this too, Ms. Heck. I know you deal with this not only, and principals, you not only deal with it from the interview process, you deal with it with reassigned. So
I mean, are we just calling the same substitutes?
we
That's
don't
what
call
people-
any
yeah.
substitutes. Remember, we use the ASOP system. It's all online. So principals you could speak to, and also Ms. Heck.
I mean, I'm interviewing weekly, and I don't just interview, I also do reference checks, and I usually check 2 to 3 references, so just so you know that, you know, it is pretty strenuous. So, I mean,
What I'm saying is we keep approving the substitutes, which I don't have a problem with because it's a good thing. I'm
Right.
not, but can we get a list? Are they still with us? Are they not staying? Are they leaving? Are we down to like 25? We've approved like, you know, let's say
We
50
could-
of them.
we could get
and
you-
We're still at the same 25 because they keep leaving. That's what I'm
Well, I
trying to
think
find out.
probably.
We
the-
could get you a list. I don't know what that's going to do to improve
Yeah, I
our
don't think that's
sub-attainment.
probably gonna,
Right.
because they have to accept the job or not accept the job.
Correct.
So if you have 50 and, 2 are accepting a job and you need 30 filled for the day, then you run into a problem.
So
Right,
on the
but-
sub,
I mean, it just gives us an idea how many subs are actually on our,
We can get you the numbers. I mean,
Exactly.
but administratively, we are not happy with our level of subs, the numbers.
I think all school districts
Let me,
are should
right,
too.
every district is wrestling with that, which is why we are continuously posting and interviewing. I'm sorry, Mr. President, I interrupted you.
so we are relying strictly on somebody checking an automated system to see if a job is available and accepting it. But if there is a shortage, on the day of, we're not actually going onto our list and calling around and seeing if anybody's available?
No, we are doing that too, and ahead of time. Why don't you guys speak to
That's
that?
what I'm
Yes.
talking
No,
about.
no, you don't,
We're saying,
When
I
we-
just wanted to make sure that we're not just strictly
Right.
relying on
No.
computers to fill jobs if,
Why don't you guys speak to that? Yes.
We have an automated system, ASOP, which we've had for many years. It works very well. The idea is it's not that the teachers and the subs have to go on and check it. It also generates calls. So it begins a calling process and calls the people. If we see, we start checking 2 to 3 days in advance to look ahead of where we are. And if we see that we're short, we make personal phone calls. And I will tell you what we're finding is that people are usually saying, I'm not available. And I was trying to wrestle with this recently because we have been having some high numbers. And it seems to be that someone said one of the possible reasons could be because we don't have a lot of turnover this year. And people are tending to sub in a district that has a potential for hiring sometimes so that they can be known, get their foot in the door, and make some connections, do some networking. That was
Right,
something
that
that was
makes-
offered
right,
to
that-
me this
that's-
week. I don't know the validity, but I'm throwing it out there.
But you're right.
We'll certainly follow up with personal calls, and if someone says, I've now accepted a job, we then forward that information to Central so that they're aware and they can be removed from the list.
right, because it just looks like every month we're approving subs, and we're still short subs. So my thing is, that's why I asked, if we hired like 50 of them, but we're down to 25, it means 25 have moved on, and where are we now?
Right, and a lot of times people are subbing in interim until they get a full-time position.
Right.
So it is, something that is.
So I guess I'm just curious to know how many subs for teachers we have, paraprofessionals out there, custodians, because we do this every month. So, just to know where we are at this point.
I'll get you the stats of the numbers.
Also worth pointing out on this evening's personnel action report is the retirement of Larry DiLeo, who actually student taught when I was still at Marlboro High School. So Larry will be retiring effective the end of this year with gold card. So congratulations to Mr. DiLeo on his retirement. We wish him well.
Good luck.
Any other questions, comments, discussion on personnel? Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes,
And myself, yes. Item number 8, resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, acknowledge the receipt of the CSE, CPSE recommendation meetings as presented. Motion for approval of CSE, CPSE recommendations. Susan, second. Joanne, discussion? Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
yes,
Myself, yes. Item number 9, textbook adoption. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves and adopts the following textbook. The American Pageant, published by Centage, grade 11, Kennedy and Cohen, copyright 2016, price $150. Motion for approval of the textbook.
it's one book,
Frank, second.
it's one book,
We'll get there. Second. Joanne,
sorry,
discussion
it's one book?
Well, no, this is the book that we're going to purchase.
for students, multiple
We'll buy
books.
as many as we need to outfit
So,
the
but
classes.
right now, we're just approving one book.
No.
Just
you're
approving the use of the
book.
book.
That's how much one book costs.
Other questions, comments? Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes,
Myself, yes. Item number 10, resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves and authorizes the Superintendent of Schools to sign the following agreements with Four Winds, 800 Cross River Road, Katona, New York, 10536, for services during the 2017-18 school year at a rate of $57, increased from $56. A motion for the approval of the contract. Joanne. Second. Frank. Discussion. Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
yes,
Myself, yes. Item number 11, resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, adopts the revised property tax report card for the 2017-18 school year as per attached. Motion for approval of the tax report card. Frank, second. Jeff? Any discussion? Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
yes,
Myself, yes. Item number 10, resolved that the, or no, item number 12, resolved that the Board of Education of the Marlborough Central School District hereby authorize the funding of the district's approved reserves with the excess of 4% from the unassigned fund balance at June 30th, 2017. The allocation of such excess fund balance will be determined subsequent to June 30th, 2017, and prior to settling the tax levy. Motion for approval of the fund balance. Frank, second. Susan, discussion.
Pat, why do we, it seems crazy. Why does it mandates us to approve it now and then figure out where it goes then?
Yeah, I mean, we won't have the financials until the audit is done, which would be after the closeout of the school year. So we approve it prior, and then, you know, prior to setting the
So
levy.
technically, you won't have that 4%.
Excuse me?
No, well,
Technically, you won't exceed the 4%.
Correct.
Right, all right. Other questions, comments, item 12? Jeffrey?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Item number 13, resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, authorizes the following transfers for the 2016-17 school year as presented. Motion for approval of budget transfers. Frank, second. Susan, discussion.
I do have a question. What exactly
Can I
is paid
let
for?
me explain first, and I might answer your question before you even ask it. This is what we talked about when we were looking at the budget this year, and I had explained how we had adjusted the allocation of the BOCES codes. BOCES had their own coding, and from the time I got here, there was a legacy of the way different programs were coded in our budget versus the way BOCES coded them in their programs. So in this year's budget, I had actually mentioned at one point that we adjusted the way that we allocate the BOCES purchases so that they align better with the BOCES coding system. So as you see, these are just all BOCES codes moving around. So we're taking money out of the BOCES codes in 2110, general teaching, and distributing them through the other areas. So you should see much less of this next year because of the way we adjusted the budget this year. Did that answer your question?
It does.
Other questions, comments on the budget transfers? Jeff?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Frank?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
And myself, yes. On to old business. Any old business for the evening?
One thing, Pat, the middle school extracurricular fund, that general ledger adjustment,
Yeah, I apologize, Frank, I don't have a answer on that yet, but I promise I will have it next time. We were just a little bit busy with the budget preparation, but I will get that answer for you. That was the one with the check that didn't,
Right, there was a double payment made because they said they lost our check, then they found our check, and they cashed both of them, and they returned, then they repaid the amount back.
but I don't, it's not in any club, that's why I'm trying to, it's a 12, and it's $1,234?
It was the 8th grade trip to Lake Compounds. So they lost the initial check, so we reissued a check, and they cashed both checks. And then we realized that, and it was the 8th grade class.
Should go back and see it.
Okay, so we're gonna need, I'm gonna wanna understand the time
Well,
frame so we
let-
can see which quarter.
yeah, let me, that was the issue, but let me get the exact details
Gotcha.
for you for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay? Thanks.
Other old business? Any new business? Any other items for the evening?
I have a couple of other items. One is, can we please make sure all the Board of Ed meetings are up on our boards? I mean, I go by and there's one meeting there, but not the second meeting, or there's two meetings and everything. The other thing is,
What does that mean?
On our
sometimes
public,
on the boards outside the schools, they're not posted, our board meetings. That,
Boards.
I know at the high school, they run it.
Oh, you mean on the marquee?
Right.
Out in
And
front?
the middle
Okay,
school, it's
because we
not
have
always-
boards, posting
it's not
boards
right.
inside the schools too, so that's
Well,
what
it's
it
always
is.
supposed to be there anyway.
Yeah.
But on the outside, because people do drive by them and they do look, and they look at Student of the Month, and they like to know when the board meetings are. And this has always been a pet peeve of mine, because we always had it done, and I've noticed we're slacking just a little bit on it. So can we just,
change our thing regularly. I will tell kudos to Justin, our new custodian, because he is out there constantly changing them. So
It should be left, you know, basically, it should also should be left, like I says, I don't know who or what, but maybe just putting on the top line, BEO meetings, and then put the 2 dates for the month, and just leave it there all month. I mean, it's just, and the other thing is, as we tell today, it's hot outside, it's nice. Dress codes, can we address dress codes and making sure, maybe reminding our parents that we do have a dress code? I don't know. So one thing I have to, when I was up in Albany at the meeting I had gone to, I had to text Bill because I couldn't find our code of conduct. I had to really, really look for it. And it kind of like upset me because other school districts that were up there with me said their code of conduct is on their main webpage, that the parents can click on it or anyone can go click on it and it's there. Is there a way that we can do that on our website? I mean, just take that code of conduct and put it out there?
I believe it's, it might, yeah.
Is it on the front page now? Because I have to tell you, I had a hard time finding the code of conduct that was in our
It's right under the Parents tab, it's the second selection.
but that's what I'm saying. I did go in there and I went on the, to look for it, and it took me a while, and then when I clicked on it, it didn't work. So I was like, there should be an easier way that the minute we go to our webpage, like other school districts, it says code of conduct, you click on it. That's all I'm asking.
Board Docs is gonna solve all that, because you'll be able to just hit code of conduct, you'll be able to find anything you want, you'll be able to search.
Right,
she's
but
saying that for
I'm
public-
saying
for
it should be
public
for
perusal.
public
That's what
awareness.
Board
It
Docs
should
is
be up
gonna
there.
be a public perusal.
When we wrap up the meeting, we can quickly navigate to see where it is.
If you don't mind, maybe, like I said, I couldn't find it that day when I was up in Albany. And I actually texted Bill, and I'm like, what happened to the code of conduct? And I kept going through everything. And I'm like, okay. Found it, clicked on it, and then it didn't really pop up. So the only reason I'm saying is because, especially with the dress codes and everything else, they're in the code of conduct. You know, so it makes it easier to sit there and say, this is where it is.
All right.
Thank you. That was it.
Anybody else?
Yes, in regards to the, what the state is mandating for the amount of days, how are we working that out? And that doesn't apply to this year, does it?
It does.
Oh, it
The,
applies to this year? We're supposed to fix that, like,
the,
immediately?
The state still, yeah. No, we'll be fine. The state requires a minimum of 180 days of attendance. In our calendar, we had built in 186 days, and we had 6
used
snow
them.
days.
Yeah?
So every day counts. The principals and Ms. Heck and myself have actually been feverishly trying to come up with a schedule for, especially the last week of school, that works for children and complies with the regulations. And I believe that we have mastered that craft. There will be slightly shortened days in the elementary school, not half days. We won't meet the minimum requirement if we have half days that week, because half days during that week slice away from meeting our weekly required minimum. So there's a problem in the elementary school if we have half days. So we won't have half days Monday through Thursday. We'll have about an hour less each day of an early release. And that information is going out today or tomorrow? Patty? That's okay. The information for parents, I know you sent out today for staff, the information for parents regarding the last week of school for dismissal times? Okay, and that'll go out on our Marlboro alert system?
So,
Okay. Okay, and the regulation also allows that the Friday of that last week can be what's termed commonly as a turnaround day, where the children come in, collect their final belongings and their report card, say goodbye to staff, and then go home. And that is allowable under it and still get the 180-day minimum. Middle school is a little bit different because it's a complicated matrix of tests and projects and activities, and that matrix is virtually finished and will be communicated out very soon. A child's schedule will vary by their schedule, so depending upon the tests and activities. I also know that Ms. Clinton and Ms. Walsh are also working with parents and staff members to come up with fun and innovative things to do with children that last week, so that it's not just sitting in a hot and sweaty, well, air-conditioned, non-sweaty, non-hot classroom.
Everything's air conditioned.
There will be good activity for children that will enhance their experience that week and not pull from it, so. Does that answer?
Yes.
It's a tough one because we have to comply. I said to the principals, here's the regulation, show it to any staff member that's complaining, because we have to comply with regulations, otherwise we lose state aid, and we're not doing that, so. And we've come up with a schedule that does comply.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Jeff? At this time, we'll recognize district residents and others with questions or comments. Please approach the podium, speak into the microphone, state your name and town, and address the Board of Education. Anybody?
Don't all line up at once.
We do have an executive session scheduled for the discussion of proposed pending or current litigation and proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of property. We do not expect there to be action afterwards. With that, motion to go to exec? Jeff, Frank, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Where's my park keys again on the screen?